Imagine that you are lying on a wooden sleeping platform in a small courtyard house in the city of Chang'an, and the year is 750 AD, and outside the paper-covered windows, the greatest city in the world is settling into the quiet rhythms of the night. Chang'an is the capital of the Tang Dynasty, the most powerful and the most cosmopolitan empire on earth. And it is home to nearly 2 million people, making it the largest city in the world. By a considerable margin, larger than Constantinople, larger than Baghdad, larger than any city that has ever existed or will exist for centuries to come. And you are here in the heart of it, lying on your platform with a silk-filled pillow beneath your head and a cotton quilt pulled up to your chest, listening to the sounds of the city as it prepares for sleep. The first sound you notice is the drum. At dusk, every evening, the great drums in the drum towers at the city gates begin to beat. A deep, resonant, thunderous sound that carries for miles, rolling across the rooftops and the courtyards and the gardens and the marketplaces in a slow, steady rhythm that means one thing and one thing only. The gates are closing. Chang'an is a city of walls within walls, a vast geometric grid of broad avenues and enclosed residential wards, each ward surrounded by its own wall and its own gates. And when the evening drums sound, the ward gates close, and the movement between wards ceases for the night. You are inside your ward now, sealed in by mud brick walls and heavy wooden gates, and you will not leave until the morning drums sound at dawn and the gates open again. This system of nightly lockdown is one of the defining features of life in Chang'an, a reflection of the Tang government's obsession with order, control, and the efficient management of the largest urban population in the world. The drumbeats fade, and the city quiets. The sounds that remain are intimate, domestic, the sounds of households settling in for the night, the splash of water being poured into a basin, the soft click of wooden sandals on a stone path, the murmur of a conversation between neighbors drifting over the courtyard wall like the scent of cooking, the distant, barely audible sound of a flute somewhere in the ward playing a melody that is plaintive and beautiful and slightly melancholy, the kind of melody that seems to belong more to the night than to the day, more to memory than to the present moment. The house you live in is modest by the standards of Chang'an's wealthy residents, but it is comfortable, clean, and well arranged. It is a courtyard house, the standard residential form of Chinese architecture, built around a central open space that provides light, air, and a private outdoor area that is the heart of the household's daily life. The courtyard is small, perhaps 20 feet square, paved with flat grey stones and planted with a single plum tree that is bare now in the autumn, its branches dark and angular against the pale evening sky. In the spring, when the plum tree blossoms, the courtyard is filled with a cloud of white and pink flowers that fill the air with a scent so delicate and so beautiful that it makes you stop whatever you are doing and simply stand and breathe. The Chinese have a particular reverence for the plum blossom because it blooms in the cold before any other flower, and it is seen as a symbol of resilience, of beauty in adversity, of the capacity to thrive in difficult conditions. It is the kind of symbolism that appeals to the Chinese sensibility, which finds meaning and significance in the natural world in a way that is both poetic and profoundly practical. The rooms of the house are arranged around the courtyard in a U shape, The main hall facing south, which is the most auspicious direction in Chinese geomancy, with smaller rooms on the east and west sides for sleeping, storage, and cooking. The construction is timber frame, with walls of plastered mud brick and a roof of grey clay tiles that curve gently upward at the eaves in the distinctive, graceful sweep that is the hallmark of Chinese architecture. The floors are packed earth, covered in places with woven reed mats, and the walls are plastered smooth and painted white, giving the interior a clean, bright, airy quality that is enhanced by the light that floods in through the paper-covered windows. The paper windows deserve a moment of attention because they are one of the small wonders of Chinese civilization. The paper is made from the bark of mulberry trees, pounded and processed into thin, translucent sheets that are strong enough to withstand wind and rain, but thin enough to admit a soft, diffused light that fills the room with a warm, gentle glow. Glass windows exist in China, but they are expensive and rare, and for most households, paper is the material of choice, producing a quality of interior light that is unique to Chinese architecture. Not the harsh, clear light of an open window or a glass pane, but a soft, luminous, slightly golden light that smooths every surface and flatters every face and makes even the most ordinary room look like a scene from a painting. Your sleeping platform is a kang, a raised brick platform that is one of the most ingenious inventions of Chinese domestic architecture. The kang is built over a system of flues that channel the hot air and smoke from the kitchen stove through the interior of the platform before venting it through a chimney at the far end. The result is a heated sleeping surface that is warm to the touch even on the coldest nights. A luxury that makes the Chinese bedroom one of the most comfortable sleeping environments in the medieval world. Tonight, the kang is pleasantly warm beneath you, radiating a gentle, even heat that seeps through the cotton mattress and into your body, relaxing your muscles and your joints and creating a sensation of warmth and comfort that is almost impossibly soothing. The bedding is simple but luxurious by the standards of the time. A cotton mattress, a silk-filled pillow, and a cotton quilt stuffed with silk floss, light and warm and soft. Silk is not a luxury in Tang, China, the way it is in the rest of the world. China has been producing silk for thousands of years, and the technology is so advanced and the production so abundant that silk is available to all but the poorest members of society. Your quilt is filled with the waste silk from the spinning process, the short, broken fibers that cannot be woven into cloth, but that make an excellent filling for bedding and clothing, light and warm and breathable. It is one of the small, unnoticed luxuries of Chinese life, the kind of thing that a visitor from Europe or the Middle East would find astonishing, but that you take entirely for granted. Let us go back to the morning and trace the arc of the day that has brought you to this moment of quiet comfort. You woke at dawn, as most residents of Chang'an do, roused by the morning drums that signal the opening of the ward gates. The drums are the heartbeat of the city, the mechanism that synchronizes the daily rhythms of 2 million people, and their sound, deep, resonant, impossibly loud, is the first and last sound of every day in Chang'an. You rose from the kang, dressed quickly in a cotton robe, and stepped into the courtyard, where the morning air was cool and fresh and scented with the faint sweet smell of osmanthus flowers from the garden next door. The morning routine in a Chinese household is orderly and unhurried. You washed your face and hands in a basin of warm water heated on the kitchen stove. You cleaned your teeth with a willow twig, frayed at the end to create a natural brush, and rinsed your mouth with a solution of salt water. You combed your hair, which is long. All Chinese men and women wear their hair long, in accordance with the Confucian principle that holds that the body, including the hair, is a gift from one's parents and should not be cut or damaged, and arranged it in a simple top knot secured with a wooden pin. The process is quick, practiced, automatic, the same sequence of actions performed in the same order every morning, as regular and as predictable as the drums that mark the opening of the day. Breakfast is tea and congee. Tea is the great drink of Tang China, consumed by every class of society, from the emperor to the poorest laborer, and it is one of the things that most distinctly characterizes Chinese civilization. The tea you drink is not like modern tea. It is a cake of compressed, dried tea leaves that has been ground into a fine powder using a stone mortar and pestle, and then whisked into hot water in a ceramic bowl, producing a thick, frothy, slightly bitter drink that is both stimulating and deeply satisfying. The art of tea preparation is taken very seriously in Tang China, and there are entire books devoted to the subject, the most famous being The Classic of Tea by the scholar Lu Yu, which describes the history, the cultivation, the preparation, and the proper enjoyment of tea with a thoroughness and a seriousness that elevates the simple act of making a cup of tea to a form of art and a spiritual practice. Congee is the other staple of the Chinese breakfast. A thick rice porridge cooked slowly over a low fire until the grains dissolve into a smooth, creamy, gently steaming mass that is both nourishing and easy to digest. It is served in a ceramic bowl with a variety of accompaniments: pickled vegetables, salted eggs, dried shrimp, shredded pork, sliced scallions, a drizzle of sesame oil. The combination of the hot, bland porridge with the salty, savory, sharply flavored accompaniments creates a breakfast that is simple but deeply satisfying, and that provides the energy and the warmth needed to face the day ahead. After breakfast, you leave the house and step into the streets of your ward. The ward is a small, self-contained neighborhood, perhaps 300 yards square, enclosed by its own walls and accessible through its own gates. Within the ward, the streets are narrow and winding, lined with houses and shops and small workshops, and the atmosphere is intimate, familiar, almost village-like, despite the fact that you are living in the center of the largest city in the world. You know your neighbors. You know the shopkeepers. You know the old woman who sits in her doorway every morning, sorting vegetables, and the children who play in the lane, and the monk who walks through the ward every day at noon, begging for his midday meal with quiet, dignified persistence. But when you pass through the ward gate and step onto one of the great avenues that crisscross Chang'an, the scale of the city hits you with full force. The avenues are enormous. The main north-south avenue, called the Avenue of the Vermilion Sparrow, is more than 500 feet wide, broader than any modern highway, a vast expanse of packed earth flanked by drainage ditches and lined with rows of elms and willows that create a green, leafy canopy in the summer months. The avenue stretches from the Imperial Palace at the northern end of the city to the southern gate, a distance of more than 5 miles, and it is as straight as an arrow, bisecting the city with a geometric precision that reflects the Chinese passion for order, symmetry, and the alignment of human structures with the cosmic principles of heaven and earth. The traffic on the avenue is extraordinary. Ox carts laden with goods, moving slowly and ponderously through the crowd. Horse-drawn carriages of the wealthy, their silk curtains drawn, their occupants invisible. Riders on horseback, some in the uniform of the Imperial Guard, others in the bright flowing robes of court officials. Palanquins carried by teams of bearers, swaying gently with each step. Monks in their grey robes, merchants in their fine silks, soldiers in their leather armor, farmers with their loads of produce, street vendors with their portable kitchens, beggars, entertainers, pilgrims, foreigners, an endless flowing, jostling, chattering, infinitely varied river of humanity that fills the avenue from one side to the other and moves with the slow, powerful, irresistible momentum of a great river flowing toward the sea. The foreigners are perhaps the most striking feature of the crowd because they are everywhere and they come from every corner of the known world. Chang'an in the 8th century is the most cosmopolitan city on earth. The eastern terminus of the Silk Road, the great overland trade route that connects China to Central Asia, Persia, the Arab world, and ultimately to the Mediterranean and Europe. The city's foreign population includes Persians, Arabs, Turks, Sogdians, Indians, Tibetans, Koreans, Japanese, and representatives of dozens of other peoples and cultures, each with their own language, their own clothing, their own customs, and their own religion. There are Zoroastrian fire temples in Chang'an, and Nestorian Christian churches, and Manichaean meeting halls, and Buddhist monasteries, and Taoist shrines, all coexisting within the walls of a single city, all tolerated and in many cases actively encouraged by a Tang government that understands the commercial and cultural value of diversity, and that takes a pragmatic, open-minded approach to religious and ethnic difference that is centuries ahead of its time. The markets of Chang'an are concentrated in two enormous commercial districts, the East Market and the West Market, each one a walled enclosure roughly a mile square, containing thousands of shops and stalls organized by trade into designated streets and alleys. The West Market, which is the more international of the two, is where you conduct your business today, and stepping through its gates is like stepping into a concentrated distillation of the entire Eurasian world. The air is thick with the smell of spices, pepper and cinnamon and cardamom and star anise and Sichuan peppercorn, whose distinctive, tingling, numbing flavor is one of the hallmarks of Chinese cooking. The sounds are a babel of languages, Chinese, of course, in its several dialects, but also Persian, Arabic, Turkish, Sogdian, Sanskrit, Korean, and half a dozen others, all mixed together in a linguistic stew that is confusing and exhilarating in equal measure. The goods on display are dazzling. Silk, of course, in every color and every weight, from the lightest gauze to the heaviest brocade, piled in great bolts on the counters of the silk merchants. Porcelain, the famous celadon and whiteware that is one of China's most celebrated exports, displayed in rows of gleaming bowls and cups and vases. Jade, carved into ornaments and jewelry and small sculptures of exquisite delicacy. Lacquerware, boxes, and trays and cups coated with layers of the natural resin that hardens into a glossy, durable, waterproof surface. Tea in bricks and cakes and loose leaf from the plantations of the south. Paper in sheets and rolls for writing and painting and wrapping and 100 other uses. And from the far end of the Silk Road, the exotic goods of the West, frankincense and myrrh from Arabia, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, coral from the Mediterranean, glass from Syria, gems and precious metals, and carved ivory from India and Persia and Africa. You spend the morning in the market, buying and selling, negotiating, exchanging news with the other merchants who form your network of business contacts. The currency of Tang China is the copper cash, a round coin with a square hole in the center that allows it to be strung on a cord for easy carrying. A string of 1,000 cash is the standard unit of account, roughly equivalent to an ounce of silver, and the coins jingle and clink in their strings as they change hands. A metallic music that is the sound of commerce in Tang China. The midday meal is taken at one of the many food stalls in the market, and the variety of food available is astonishing. There are noodles pulled by hand from a ball of wheat dough, stretched and folded and pulled again until the dough has been transformed into long, thin, perfectly uniform strands that are tossed into a pot of boiling broth and served with sliced meat, chopped scallions, and a splash of vinegar. There are dumplings, small parcels of dough filled with minced pork and ginger and cabbage, steamed in bamboo baskets until they are hot and plump and glistening. There are flatbreads stuffed with spiced lamb, a Central Asian import that has become one of the most popular street foods in Chang'an. There are skewers of grilled meat, marinated in soy sauce and sesame and threaded on thin bamboo sticks. There are bowls of tofu, silky and white, swimming in a sauce of chili oil and Sichuan peppercorn that makes your lips tingle and your eyes water and your whole body flush with a warmth that starts in your throat and spreads outward to the tips of your fingers. The food of Tang China is one of the great cuisines of the ancient world, as sophisticated and as varied as the cuisine of Rome or Constantinople, and in some ways more so, because the Chinese culinary tradition draws on a wider range of ingredients, a more complex palette of flavors, and a more refined set of cooking techniques than any other cuisine of the period. The Chinese cook uses soy sauce, vinegar, sesame oil, ginger, garlic, scallions, star anise, cinnamon, Sichuan peppercorn, fermented black beans, and a dozen other seasonings to create flavors that are simultaneously salty, sweet, sour, spicy, and savory. A combination that the Chinese call the 5 flavors, and that they believe should be present in some form in every well-composed dish. The cooking techniques include stir-frying, steaming, braising, boiling, deep-frying, smoking, and roasting, each one producing a different texture and a different flavor from the same raw ingredients. A Chinese cook can take a simple piece of pork and prepare it in 20 different ways, each one distinct, each one delicious, each one a small masterpiece of culinary art. After the midday meal, the pace of the day slows. The afternoon heat settles over the city, and the streets empty as people retreat to the shade of their courtyards and the coolness of their rooms. This is the hour of rest, the siesta, when the great city pauses and catches its breath before the activity of the evening begins. You return to your house, drink a cup of tea in the shade of the plum tree, and lie down on the kang for an hour of rest. The kang is cool now, its heating channels empty, and the cotton mattress is pleasant against your skin, and the paper windows filter the afternoon light into a soft, golden glow that fills the room with a warmth that is visual rather than physical. the warmth of sunlight softened and diffused and made gentle. The afternoon passes. The evening approaches. The shadows lengthen in the courtyard, and the light turns from gold to amber to deep, warm orange as the sun descends toward the western horizon. The smell of cooking begins to fill the air. Your neighbor is preparing dinner, and the scent of ginger and garlic and sesame oil drifts over the courtyard wall with an insistence that is impossible to ignore. Your own household begins its evening preparations. Rice is washed and set to steam in a clay pot. Vegetables are washed and cut. A piece of pork is sliced thin and marinated in soy sauce and rice wine, and a pinch of sugar. The kitchen stove is stoked with charcoal, and the wok, a large, thin, curved iron pan, is set over the flame and heated until a drop of water sizzles and evaporates on contact. The stir-fry is one of the great inventions of Chinese cooking, a technique that produces food of extraordinary flavor and texture in a matter of minutes. The wok is heated to an extreme temperature. A small amount of oil is added, and the ingredients are tossed into the pan in rapid succession. First, the aromatics, the ginger and garlic and scallions, which sizzle and release their fragrance in a burst of steam. Then the meat, which sears quickly on the hot surface, browning and caramelizing. Then the vegetables, which cook in seconds, retaining their color and their crunch. And finally, the sauce, a quick mixture of soy sauce and rice wine and a thickener of cornstarch, which coats the ingredients in a glossy, savory glaze that is the signature of Chinese stir-fry cooking. The entire process takes perhaps 3 minutes, and the result is a dish that is fresh, vibrant, intensely flavorful, and alive with the particular slightly smoky, slightly caramelized taste that the Chinese call wok hei, the breath of the wok, a taste that can only be achieved by cooking at very high temperatures in a well-seasoned iron pan. Dinner is served in the main hall, the family gathered around a low table, sitting on cushions on the floor. The table is set with several dishes: the stir-fried pork with vegetables, a bowl of steamed rice, a plate of pickled radish, a soup of tofu and seaweed. Chopsticks and ceramic spoons are the eating implements, and the meal is consumed with the quiet, appreciative concentration that the Chinese bring to the act of eating, a seriousness that reflects the importance they place on food, not just as nourishment, but as one of the fundamental pleasures of civilized life. After dinner, the evening unfolds in the gentle, unhurried way that is characteristic of Chinese domestic life. Tea is served again, this time a lighter, more delicate brew, appropriate for the evening. The family sits in the courtyard, enjoying the cool evening air, watching the last light fade from the sky. Someone recites a poem. Poetry is the supreme art form of Tang China, practiced by everyone from the emperor to the common soldier, and the ability to compose and recite poetry is a mark of education, of sensitivity, and of social refinement. The poems of the Tang Dynasty are among the greatest in the Chinese literary tradition, and many of them are about exactly this kind of moment: an evening in a courtyard, the fading light, the scent of flowers, the sound of a flute, the bittersweet awareness of the passing of time, and the beauty that exists within it. The poet Li Bai, who is alive right now somewhere in this very city, has written poems that capture this feeling with a precision and a beauty that have never been surpassed. He writes about drinking wine under the moon, about saying goodbye to a friend at a river crossing, about lying awake at night and thinking about his distant home. His poems are short, simple and luminous, and they express a quality of emotional clarity and directness that transcends the barriers of language and culture and speaks directly to the human heart. To hear a poem by Li Bai recited in the courtyard on a warm evening with the plum tree overhead and the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky is to experience one of the great pleasures of Chinese civilization, a pleasure that is available to anyone who has ears to hear and a heart to feel. The evening drums sound. The ward gates close. The city seals itself for the night, each ward becoming an island of domesticity in the vast grid of the sleeping metropolis. The sounds of the city change. The bustling commercial noise of the day gives way to the softer, more intimate sounds of the evening, the sounds of families at rest, of children being put to bed, of conversations winding down, of the last cups of tea being poured and the last poems being recited before the household surrenders to sleep. You make your way to the sleeping chamber and lie down on the kang, which is warm again, heated by the evening's cooking. The cotton mattress is smooth beneath you. The silk pillow is cool against your cheek. The quilt is light and warm, and you pull it up to your chin with the satisfying, slightly ritualistic gesture that marks the formal transition from wakefulness to sleep. The paper windows glow faintly with the last light of the evening, and then they darken, and the room is filled with a soft, warm, enveloping darkness that smells of incense and sandalwood and the faint, lingering aroma of the evening meal. The sounds of the ward reach you through the walls and the windows, softened and made gentle by distance and by the filtering effect of the paper screens. A dog barks once and then falls silent. A child laughs, a bright, clear sound that rings through the quiet like a bell, and then is gone. A door closes, a latch drops, a pair of wooden sandals is set down on a stone step with a soft double click. These are the sounds of a neighborhood going to sleep. The same sounds that neighborhoods have been making everywhere and always, in every city and in every century. The universal, timeless, endlessly comforting sounds of human beings completing the rituals of the day and releasing themselves into the care of the night. You close your eyes. The kang is warm beneath you, a steady, gentle, all-encompassing warmth that seeps into your muscles and your bones and makes your whole body feel heavy and relaxed and perfectly at ease. The warmth is not like the warmth of a fire, which is fierce and directional, hot on one side and cold on the other. It is an even, surrounding, almost maternal warmth that comes from below and from within, wrapping you in a cocoon of comfort that is one of the distinctive pleasures of Chinese domestic life, and that you, like every person who has ever slept on a heated kang, will remember with particular fondness for the rest of your days. Your mind drifts. You think about the market, about the silk and the spices, about the noodles you ate for lunch, about the foreigner you saw in the West Market. A tall, blue-eyed man with red hair and a thick beard, dressed in the heavy woolen clothing of the Far West, who was bargaining for a bolt of silk in halting, heavily accented Chinese. You wonder where he came from. Persia, perhaps, or beyond. You wonder what stories he could tell, what things he has seen on the long, dangerous, infinitely fascinating road that connects Chang'an to the distant, almost mythical lands of the West. The Silk Road is one of the great arteries of the world, a lifeline of trade and culture and ideas that stretches for thousands of miles across deserts and mountains and plains. And every bolt of silk that passes along it, every bag of pepper, every gemstone, and every coin carries with it a story of human courage, human ingenuity, and human determination to connect with the unknown. But the thought dissolves before it can fully form, and another takes its place, and then another, and then the thoughts stop coming altogether, and there is nothing left but the warmth and the darkness and the sound of your own breathing, slow and steady and deep, synchronizing gradually with the breathing of the household, with the breathing of the ward, with the breathing of the city itself. 2 million people lying down in 2 million beds in a vast, geometric, perfectly ordered grid of sleeping humanity. All of them breathing the same night air. All of them drifting toward the same destination. All of them surrendering to the same ancient, universal, irresistible tide of sleep. Chang'an sleeps. The great avenues are empty, their surfaces pale in the moonlight, stretching from gate to gate like rivers of stone. The ward walls stand dark and silent, their gates locked and bolted, their guard towers manned by drowsy watchmen who lean on their spears and fight the pull of sleep. The imperial palace at the northern end of the city is a vast, dark, silent complex of halls and courtyards and gardens, its roofs gleaming faintly in the moonlight, its gates guarded by soldiers who stand as still and as silent as statues. The emperor himself is asleep, somewhere deep within that enormous complex, surrounded by his attendants and his concubines and his eunuchs and his guards. The Son of Heaven at rest in the center of the Middle Kingdom, the center of the world. The moon rises over the eastern wall of the city, a great, pale, luminous disk that climbs slowly into the sky and pours its light over the rooftops and the courtyards and the empty avenues, turning everything to silver and shadow. The moonlight falls on the tiled roofs, on the plum trees in the courtyards, on the stone lions that guard the gates of the wealthy, on the paper windows of the sleeping houses, making them glow faintly from without. Pale rectangles of light in the dark facades, like lanterns that have been dimmed but not extinguished. Li Bai is awake. Somewhere in the city, the greatest poet of the age is sitting alone in his room, a cup of wine in his hand, watching the moonlight fall on the floor. He is composing a poem about this very moment, about the moonlight, about the silence, about the ache of loneliness that comes with the beauty of the night. The poem will survive for more than 1,000 years, carried down through the centuries in the memories of school children and the pages of anthologies. A small, perfect, indestructible fragment of human feeling preserved in the amber of language. But right now, it is just a man and a moon and a cup of wine, and the words forming slowly, one by one, in the silence of the night. You do not know that Li Bai is awake. You do not know that a poem is being written. You are asleep, deeply and completely asleep, on your warm kang in your small courtyard house in the greatest city in the world. The quilt is light on your body. The pillow is soft beneath your head. The warmth of the kang is steady and gentle and all-encompassing. And the night holds you as it holds every sleeper in this vast, sleeping city, in its dark, quiet, infinitely patient arms. The night watchman makes his rounds, walking through the silent lanes of the ward, striking a wooden clapper at regular intervals to mark the passing of the hours and to reassure the sleeping residents that someone is awake, someone is watching, someone is keeping guard while the city rests. The sound of the clapper is one of the characteristic sounds of the Chinese night. A sharp, rhythmic, slightly hollow sound that carries clearly in the still air, a heartbeat of vigilance in the sleeping body of the city. The hours pass. The moon crosses the sky and begins to descend toward the western wall. The constellations turn in their ancient pattern, the same stars that the Chinese astronomers have been observing and recording for thousands of years, mapping their movements with a precision and a thoroughness that is unmatched anywhere in the world. The Chinese have been watching the sky since the dawn of their civilization, recording eclipses, comets, supernovae, and planetary conjunctions with a diligence that has produced the most complete and most accurate astronomical record in human history. The sky above Chang'an is not just a spectacle. It is a book, a record, a map of time itself, and the scholars who read it are among the most honored and most important members of the imperial court. But you are not reading the sky tonight. You are sleeping beneath it, unconscious of its beauty and its vastness, carried by the current of sleep through the dark hours toward the dawn that is gathering. Even now, on the far side of the world, preparing to flood the eastern horizon with the pale, clear, luminous light of a new Chinese morning. The dawn will bring the drums. The drums will bring the opening of the gates. The gates will bring the movement of people, the resumption of commerce, the clatter and the bustle and the infinite, teeming, endlessly fascinating life of the greatest city in the world. The tea will be prepared. The congee will be served. The streets will fill. The markets will open. And the whole magnificent, intricate, perfectly ordered mechanism of Tang Dynasty civilization will click into motion once more, as it has done every morning for more than a century, and as it will continue to do for decades to come, sustained by the labor and the skill and the quiet daily courage of the millions of ordinary people who make it work. But that is morning. This is night, and the night in Chang'an is deep and dark and warm and quiet, and the kang is heated, and the quilt is soft, and the moonlight is falling through the paper windows in pale, luminous rectangles on the floor. And somewhere in the city, a poet is writing about the moon, and somewhere in the ward, a dog is dreaming, and somewhere in your house, a cricket is singing its small, thin, silvery song, and you are asleep, deeply and peacefully asleep, in the warm heart of the Tang Dynasty, in the warm heart of the night, in the warm heart of the greatest civilization the world has ever known. Sleep well. The drums will come. The morning will come. But not yet. Not yet. For now, there is only the night and the warmth and the silence and the moon and the poem that is being written about this very moment in this very city on this very night 1,000 years ago. And that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. Let us return to the daylight hours once more, because there is much about Chang'an that we have only touched upon, and the richness of life in this city deserves a more thorough exploration. The poetry of Tang China is not a hobby or a pastime. It is the supreme cultural achievement of the civilization, the art form that the Chinese value above all others, and it permeates every level of society with a thoroughness that would astonish a modern visitor. Poetry is part of the civil service examination, the grueling series of tests that determines who will be appointed to government office. A young man who wishes to serve the empire must be able to compose poetry on demand in strict formal patterns with references to the classical literary tradition and with a level of verbal artistry that demonstrates both learning and talent. The result is that the ruling class of Tang China is, quite literally, a class of poets, and the connection between literary skill and political power gives Chinese culture a unique quality, a fusion of aesthetic sensitivity and practical governance that has no parallel in any other civilization. The great poets of the Tang are celebrities, their works known and recited by millions. Li Bai, the brilliant, hard-drinking, moon-worshipping genius who is the most famous poet in Chinese history, is a figure of almost mythical stature, even in his own lifetime. His poems are simple, spontaneous, and luminous, filled with moonlight and wine and mountain scenery, and the particular bittersweet loneliness that the Chinese call chu, a word that means something between melancholy and nostalgia, and that is considered one of the deepest and most beautiful of human emotions. Du Fu, the other great poet of the age, is very different, more serious, more political, more concerned with the suffering of ordinary people and the responsibilities of those in power. His poems are complex, densely packed with meaning, and suffused with a compassion and a moral seriousness that make them, in the opinion of many Chinese scholars, the greatest poems ever written in any language. Together, Li Bai and Du Fu represent the two poles of the Chinese poetic tradition, the spontaneous and the disciplined, the personal and the political, the joyful and the sorrowful, and their work defines the golden age of Chinese poetry. But poetry is not the only art form that flourishes in Tang China. The visual arts are equally vibrant, and the combination of painting, calligraphy, and poetry, the three perfections, as the Chinese call them, is considered the highest expression of artistic achievement. Chinese painting in the Tang Dynasty is characterized by a combination of technical skill, aesthetic sensitivity, and philosophical depth that places it among the greatest painting traditions in world history. Landscape painting, in particular, reaches new heights of sophistication, with artists using ink and wash on silk or paper to create images of mountains, rivers, forests, and clouds that are simultaneously realistic and abstract, capturing not just the appearance of the natural world, but its essence, its mood, its spiritual quality. A great Chinese landscape painting is not a picture of a mountain. It is an experience of a mountain, a meditation on the relationship between the human observer and the vast, eternal, infinitely mysterious natural world. Calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing, is valued even more highly than painting because it is considered a direct expression of the character and the spirit of the person who creates it. Every stroke of the brush reveals something about the calligrapher, their energy, their discipline, their emotional state, their level of cultivation. A piece of calligraphy by a great master is treasured as a work of art in its own right, hung on the wall of a study or a reception room, admired and analyzed with the same attention and the same reverence that a Westerner might bring to a painting by Rembrandt or a sculpture by Michelangelo. The tools of the calligrapher, the brush, the ink, the inkstone, and the paper, are known as the four treasures of the study, and they are objects of considerable beauty in themselves, crafted with the care and the artistry that the Chinese bring to every aspect of their material culture. The music of Tang China is another area of extraordinary richness. The Tang court maintains a vast musical establishment with hundreds of musicians and dancers who perform at state ceremonies, religious festivals, and private entertainments. The instruments include the pipa, a pear-shaped lute with 4 strings that produces a bright, resonant, surprisingly versatile sound. The erhu, a 2-stringed fiddle with a hauntingly beautiful, slightly nasal tone. The dizi, a bamboo flute with a clear, penetrating voice. The sheng, a mouth organ made of bamboo pipes arranged in a cluster, which produces a sound that is simultaneously reedy and ethereal. And dozens of drums, gongs, bells, and other percussion instruments that provide the rhythmic foundation for the music. The music itself draws on a wide range of influences: Chinese, Central Asian, Indian, Korean, and Japanese, reflecting the cosmopolitan character of the Tang court and the openness of Tang culture to foreign ideas and foreign art forms. Now, let us talk about the Buddhist temples of Chang'an, because Buddhism is one of the most important and most visible forces in Tang Chinese life, and the temples are among the most impressive buildings in the city. Buddhism arrived in China from India several centuries earlier, traveling along the Silk Road with the merchants and the monks who made the long, dangerous journey across Central Asia. And by the Tang Dynasty, it has become one of the dominant religions of the empire, practiced by millions of Chinese from the emperor down to the poorest peasant. The Buddhist temples of Chang'an are among the most magnificent religious buildings in the world, their grounds covering many acres, their halls and pagodas and gardens creating self-contained worlds of beauty and serenity within the bustling city. The largest temple in Chang'an is the Great Wild Goose Pagoda, a towering structure of brick and stone that rises more than 200 feet above the surrounding buildings, and that is visible from virtually every point in the city. The pagoda was built to house the Buddhist scriptures brought back from India by the monk Xuanzang, who made the epic journey to the Indian subcontinent and back in the 7th century. A journey that took 16 years and that covered more than 10,000 miles of the most difficult terrain on Earth. Xuanzang's journey is one of the great adventures of the medieval world, and his account of it, a detailed, vivid, sometimes harrowing description of the lands and peoples he encountered, is one of the most important geographical and ethnographic documents of the period. The scriptures he brought back, carefully translated into Chinese by teams of scholars working under his direction, form the foundation of Chinese Buddhist thought, and the pagoda that houses them is a monument not just to religious devotion, but to the extraordinary human capacity for courage, endurance, and the pursuit of knowledge. The daily life of a Buddhist monastery in Tang China follows a strict and orderly routine. The monks rise before dawn and assemble in the main hall for morning prayers, chanting the sutras in a low, rhythmic, mesmerizing drone that fills the hall with a vibrating, almost physical wave of sound. After prayers, there is a period of meditation, followed by a simple breakfast of rice porridge and pickled vegetables. The rest of the day is divided between study, manual labor, and additional periods of prayer and meditation, with every hour accounted for and every activity performed with the mindful, deliberate attention that is the essence of Buddhist practice. The monks eat 2 meals a day, both vegetarian, and they eat in silence, focusing their attention on the food and the act of eating with the same concentration they bring to prayer and meditation. The vegetarian cuisine of the Buddhist monasteries has had a profound influence on Chinese cooking, developing a sophisticated tradition of plant-based cooking that uses tofu, wheat gluten, mushrooms, bamboo shoots, and a vast array of vegetables and seasonings to create dishes that are as complex, as flavorful, and as satisfying as any meat-based cuisine. The skill of the monastery cooks is legendary, and their ability to transform simple, humble ingredients into dishes of extraordinary beauty and taste is considered a form of spiritual practice in its own right, an expression of the Buddhist principle that every action, no matter how mundane, can be performed with attention, with care, and with love. The gardens of the Buddhist temples are among the most beautiful spaces in Chang'an, carefully designed landscapes of rocks, water, plants, and trees that are intended to evoke the natural beauty of mountains and rivers in miniature. The Chinese garden is not a geometric formal space like a European garden. It is an asymmetric, irregular, deliberately naturalistic composition that seeks to capture the essence of the wild landscape. A craggy rock becomes a mountain. A small pond becomes a lake. A carefully placed tree becomes a forest. The effect is one of compression and suggestion, a whole landscape condensed into a small space, inviting the viewer to use their imagination to expand the garden outward, to see beyond its physical boundaries into the infinite landscape of the mind. Walking through one of these gardens in the evening, when the light is soft and golden and the shadows are deep and mysterious, is an experience of extraordinary beauty and peace. The sound of water trickling over stones, the rustle of bamboo in the breeze, the scent of lotus flowers floating on the surface of a pond, the sight of goldfish moving slowly through the dark, clear water. These sensory impressions combine to create a state of mind that the Chinese describe as Qingjing, a word that means clear and quiet, a state of mental stillness and clarity that is the goal of both Buddhist meditation and Chinese aesthetic appreciation. The evening is deepening now, and we should make our way back to the house and to the night that is waiting for us. The walk home through the ward is pleasant, the air cool and fragrant with the scent of flowering trees and the lingering aroma of cooking fires. The lane is nearly empty, the last of the evening strollers heading home, their voices low and unhurried, their footsteps soft on the stone paving. A lantern glows in a doorway, casting a warm golden circle of light on the ground. A cat sits on a wall, its eyes gleaming in the dark. The plum tree in your courtyard is a dark shape against the paler darkness of the sky, its branches still and patient, waiting for the spring that will call it back to life. Inside the house, the evening rituals unfold with their usual quiet grace. The family gathers in the main hall for a last cup of tea, the ceramic cups warm in their hands, the tea fragrant and slightly bitter, exactly the right flavor for the end of the day. The children are put to bed, their small bodies washed and dressed in clean cotton sleeping clothes, their hair loosened and spread on their pillows, their eyes already closing as their mother pulls the quilts up to their chins and murmurs a few soft words of good night. The adults linger for a while, talking quietly, reviewing the events of the day, making plans for tomorrow. And then they too retire, moving through the darkened rooms to their kangs, where the warmth is waiting for them, steady and gentle and unfailing. The Confucian virtues that govern Chinese social life, filial piety, respect for elders, loyalty to family and friends, the cultivation of personal virtue through study and self-discipline, are not abstract philosophical principles in Tang China. They are the practical, everyday rules that govern every interaction, every relationship, every decision. The way you greet your neighbor in the morning, the way you serve tea to a guest, the way you address your parents, your teachers, your superiors, the way you discipline your children, manage your household, conduct your business. Everything is governed by a code of behavior that has been refined over centuries, and that is taught to every Chinese child from the moment they can speak. The result is a society that is remarkably orderly, remarkably harmonious, and remarkably stable, held together not by force or fear, but by a shared commitment to a set of values that everyone understands and everyone accepts. The Taoist tradition, which coexists with Confucianism and Buddhism in the complex religious landscape of Tang China, contributes a different set of values: spontaneity, naturalness, the acceptance of change, the cultivation of inner stillness, and the pursuit of harmony with the natural world. The Tao Te Ching, the foundational text of Taoism, teaches that the highest wisdom lies not in action, but in non-action, not in controlling the world, but in flowing with it, like water flowing downhill, finding the path of least resistance, adapting to every obstacle, shaping itself to every container. This philosophy of effortless action, of going with the flow, of accepting the world as it is rather than struggling to make it what you want it to be, is deeply embedded in Chinese culture, and it expresses itself in everything from the art of painting, to the practice of medicine, to the design of gardens, to the preparation of tea. Tonight, lying on your warm kang, you are, without knowing it, practicing a form of Taoist non-action. You are not doing anything. You are not trying to do anything. You are simply lying still, letting the warmth carry you, letting the darkness enfold you, letting the sounds of the night wash over you like water over a stone. You are not resisting sleep. You are not pursuing it. You are simply allowing it to come, in its own time, in its own way, as naturally and as inevitably as water flowing downhill. And the sleep that comes is deep and natural and effortless. The kind of sleep that the Taoists would call Wu Wei, actionless action, the state of being in perfect harmony with the natural order of the world. The night deepens over Chang'an. 2 million people sleep in their beds, in their wards, behind their walls, a vast geometric grid of sleeping humanity arranged with a precision and an orderliness that is a reflection of the civilization that built it. The emperor sleeps, the poets sleep, the monks sleep, the merchants, the soldiers, the farmers, the craftsmen, the foreigners, the beggars, the children. All of them sleep, each in their own bed, each in their own world of darkness and warmth and dreams, connected to each other only by the city that contains them, and the night that covers them, and the dawn that will wake them. The moon passes over the city, its light falling on the tiled roofs, and the empty avenues, and the locked ward gates, and the paper windows that glow faintly, almost imperceptibly, with the warmth of the sleeping bodies within. The great wild goose pagoda stands against the sky like a dark finger pointing toward the stars, a monument to faith and knowledge, and the extraordinary human willingness to travel to the ends of the earth in search of truth. The willows along the canal stir faintly in a breeze that carries the smell of water and night-blooming jasmine, and the distant, barely audible sound of the watchman's clapper, marking the hours, keeping the count. measuring the passage of the night in small, rhythmic, wooden heartbeats. And you sleep on. Your body is warm, your mind is still, your breathing is slow and deep and even. The Kang holds you, the quilt covers you, the night surrounds you. And the great, ancient, endlessly creative, endlessly beautiful civilization of Tang China sleeps around you, a civilization that has produced more art, more poetry, more philosophy, more invention, and more human happiness than almost any other civilization in the history of the world. And that is on this particular night, in this particular city, at the peak of its power and its glory, a shining beacon of human achievement in a dark and uncertain world. Sleep well. The drums will sound, the gates will open, the tea will be prepared, the city will wake. But not yet. For now, the night is deep, the Kang is warm, and the moonlight is falling through the paper windows onto the floor of your room. And somewhere in the city, a poem is being written about this very moonlight. And somewhere in a temple, a monk is chanting in the darkness. And somewhere on the Silk Road, a caravan is moving slowly through the desert night, carrying silk and spices and stories toward the distant, unimaginable lands of the West. And you are asleep, in the warm heart of the night, in the warm heart of the world. There is more to say about the daily texture of life in Chang'an, and the night is generous with its time. Let us consider the matter of clothing, because what the people of Tang China wear tells you a great deal about the sophistication and the openness of their civilization. Chinese clothing in the Tang Dynasty is among the most beautiful and most varied in the world, reflecting a culture that values elegance, color, and the subtle art of self-presentation. The basic garment for both men and women is the robe, a long, wrapped garment that crosses over the front of the body and is secured with a sash at the waist. The cut is simple, but the fabrics and the decorations are not. Silk, of course, is the fabric of choice for anyone who can afford it, and it comes in an astonishing range of weights, weaves, and colors. There are heavy silks and light silks, plain silks and patterned silks, silks woven with gold thread, and silks embroidered with flowers and birds and dragons and clouds. The dyeing technology is advanced, and the palette includes brilliant reds, deep blues, vivid greens, warm yellows, rich purples, and subtle, complex shades that have no equivalent in the Western color vocabulary. The result is a visual culture that is extraordinarily rich and varied, a world of color and texture and pattern that makes the streets of Chang'an one of the most visually exciting places on earth. The fashion of the Tang court is particularly spectacular. The women of the aristocracy wear elaborate, multi-layered ensembles that can include as many as 12 separate garments, each one visible at the collar and the sleeves, creating a cascading effect of color and texture that is the hallmark of Tang female fashion. Their hair is arranged in towering, architecturally complex styles that can take hours to create and that are adorned with gold and silver ornaments, jade hairpins, and clusters of artificial flowers made from silk and feathers. Their faces are powdered white, their eyebrows painted in bold, dramatic shapes, their lips colored a vivid red with a pigment made from safflower or cinnabar. The overall effect is breathtaking, a combination of elegance, extravagance, and artistry that makes the women of the Tang court some of the most fashionable figures in the history of world culture. What is particularly striking about Tang fashion is its openness to foreign influence. Central Asian styles are extremely popular, particularly among the aristocracy, and it is not uncommon to see Chinese women wearing boots, trousers, and fitted jackets in the Central Asian style, or riding horses astride rather than side saddle, or playing polo, which is a Persian sport that has become enormously fashionable at the Tang court. This enthusiastic adoption of foreign fashion reflects the broader cultural attitude of the Tang Dynasty. Open, confident, cosmopolitan, eager to absorb the best of what the outside world has to offer, while maintaining a secure sense of its own identity and its own cultural superiority. The Tang Chinese do not fear foreign influence. They welcome it, transform it, and make it their own, in a process of cultural assimilation that is one of the defining characteristics of Chinese civilization. The technology of Tang China is another area that deserves attention, because the Chinese are, in this period, the most technologically advanced civilization on Earth, and many of their inventions will eventually transform the world. Paper, which the Chinese invented in the 2nd century, is by now an indispensable part of daily life, used for everything from writing and painting to wrapping and packaging, to the manufacture of clothing, fans, screens, lanterns, and even armor. The production of paper is a major industry, with specialized workshops producing different grades for different purposes. Thick, heavy paper for official documents, thin, translucent paper for windows and lanterns, soft, absorbent paper for personal hygiene, and fine, smooth paper for calligraphy and painting. The technology has been perfected over centuries, and the best Chinese paper, made from the bark of mulberry trees, is the finest writing surface in the world, superior to the papyrus of Egypt, the parchment of Europe, and the palm leaves of India. Printing is another Chinese invention that is already in use, though it will not reach its full development for another century or two. In the Tang Dynasty, the primary method of printing is wood block printing, in which the text or image is carved in reverse on a flat block of wood, inked, and pressed onto a sheet of paper. The technique is used primarily for reproducing Buddhist texts and images, which are produced in large quantities for distribution to temples and monasteries throughout the empire. The idea of printing individual characters on movable type, which will revolutionize the production of books when it is fully developed in the Song dynasty, is still in the future. But the basic concept of mechanical reproduction, of using a carved template to produce multiple identical copies of a text, is already understood and practiced. Gunpowder is another invention that is taking shape in the laboratories of Tang Chinese alchemists, who are searching for the elixir of immortality, and who, in the process, are discovering the explosive properties of certain combinations of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. In the Tang Dynasty, gunpowder is used primarily for fireworks and for certain medical and alchemical purposes, and its military applications have not yet been fully explored. But the knowledge is there, accumulating in the writings of the alchemists and the records of the imperial workshops, waiting for the moment when some inventive mind will connect the explosive power of gunpowder with the practical needs of warfare and produce the weapons that will change the face of battle forever. The compass, too, is a Chinese invention, though in the Tang Dynasty it is used primarily for geomancy, the art of determining the most auspicious orientation for buildings, tombs, and other structures, rather than for navigation. The Chinese compass is a simple device, a magnetized needle floating in a bowl of water, and its ability to point consistently toward the south. The Chinese orient their compasses toward the south rather than the north has been known for centuries. The application of the compass to maritime navigation will come later in the Song Dynasty, and it will transform Chinese seafaring and eventually the seafaring of the entire world. These inventions, paper, printing, gunpowder, and the compass, are the four great inventions of Chinese civilization, and their impact on human history is almost impossible to overstate. Together, they will transform communication, warfare, navigation, and knowledge itself, creating the foundations of the modern world. And all four of them originate in China in the centuries around the Tang Dynasty, the product of a civilization that values knowledge, encourages experimentation, and possesses a level of technological sophistication that will not be matched by any other civilization for centuries. Let us speak now about the water systems of Chang'an, because water is as essential to this city as it is to any other. And the way the Chinese manage their water supply reveals the same combination of engineering skill and aesthetic sensitivity that characterizes everything they do. Chang'an is supplied with water by a system of canals that bring water from the Wei River and its tributaries into the city, where it flows through a network of channels and pools that serve both practical and ornamental purposes. The canals provide water for drinking, cooking, washing, and irrigation. They also provide transportation, with small boats carrying goods and passengers through the interior of the city along waterways that are lined with willows and crossed by elegant arched bridges. And they provide beauty because the Chinese have a deep and instinctive appreciation for the aesthetic qualities of water, its movement, its sound, its reflections, its ability to bring life and freshness and a sense of coolness to the most congested urban environment. The public wells and fountains of Chang'an are gathering places, just as they are in every city, and the daily trip to the well is a social occasion as much as a practical one, a chance to exchange news and gossip, and to maintain the network of neighborly relationships that is the foundation of community life. The water carriers, men who earn their living by carrying water in buckets on a shoulder pole from the wells to the houses of those who cannot or will not fetch their own, are a familiar sight in every ward. Their calls of fresh water, rising above the general noise of the street in a sing-song chant that is both an advertisement and a kind of music. The public bathhouses of Chang'an are another important institution, though they are less grand and less central to social life than the baths of Rome or Constantinople. The Chinese approach to bathing is more private and more modest than the Roman approach, reflecting the Confucian emphasis on propriety and the Buddhist influence on attitudes toward the body. Public baths exist, but they are simple, functional establishments, offering hot water, towels, and basic washing facilities without the elaborate social rituals and the architectural grandeur of the Roman thermae. More common is the practice of bathing at home, using heated water poured into a large wooden tub, a process that is both more private and more comfortable than the public bath, and that allows the bather to take their time, to soak and relax and enjoy the warmth of the water in the quiet of their own courtyard. The healthcare system of Tang China is remarkably sophisticated, drawing on a medical tradition that stretches back thousands of years, and that includes a comprehensive theory of the body, a detailed pharmacopoeia of herbal remedies, and a range of therapeutic techniques that include acupuncture, moxibustion, massage, and dietary therapy. The fundamental concept of Chinese medicine is the idea of qi, the vital energy that flows through the body along specific channels called meridians, and that must be kept in balance for the body to remain healthy. Disease, in the Chinese understanding, is caused by an imbalance of qi, and the goal of treatment is to restore the balance by stimulating or sedating the flow of energy through the affected meridians. Acupuncture, the insertion of thin needles into specific points along the meridians, is the most characteristic technique of Chinese medicine, and it has been practiced for more than 2,000 years. The acupuncture points are mapped on the body with extraordinary precision, and the skilled acupuncturist can treat a wide range of conditions, from headaches and back pain to digestive disorders and respiratory illnesses, by inserting needles at the appropriate points and manipulating them with gentle twisting movements that stimulate the flow of qi. The technique sounds strange and even alarming to a modern Western observer, but it is, in fact, remarkably effective for certain conditions, and its principles and practices have survived essentially unchanged into the modern era, a testament to the skill and the insight of the ancient Chinese physicians who developed it. The herbal pharmacopoeia of Tang China is one of the most comprehensive in the world, containing thousands of entries for plants, minerals, and animal products that are used to treat every conceivable ailment. The most important reference work is the Benkao Gangmu, a vast compendium of medical knowledge that classifies and describes every known medicinal substance, with detailed information on its properties, its preparation, its dosage, and its uses. The medicines are prepared by specialists, herbalists, apothecaries, and pharmacists who maintain shops in every ward of the city. Their shelves lined with hundreds of jars and drawers containing dried herbs, roots, bark, seeds, minerals, and animal products, each one carefully labeled and stored. A visit to a Chinese apothecary is an experience that engages all the senses. The smell is extraordinary, a complex, layered, intensely aromatic blend of dried herbs and roots and spices that is unlike anything else in the world. The visual impression is equally striking. Rows upon rows of small wooden drawers, each one labeled with elegant calligraphy, containing a different medicinal substance. The sound is the sound of the pharmacist at work, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle, measuring doses on a small balance scale, wrapping the prescribed medicines in paper packets with the practiced, economical movements of someone who has performed this task thousands of times. But we have wandered far from the bedroom and the night, and it is time to return. The deepest part of the night has arrived, the hour when the city is most completely asleep, when even the watchman's clapper seems to sound more slowly and more softly, as if the man who strikes it is himself half asleep, going through the motions of his duty with the automatic, mechanical rhythm of someone whose body is awake but whose mind has already surrendered to the pull of unconsciousness. The moon has moved past its zenith and is beginning its descent toward the western horizon, and the quality of its light has changed, becoming paler, more silvery, more ethereal. as if the moon itself is growing tired and is preparing to hand over its duties to the sun, which is already climbing toward the eastern horizon, still hours away, but moving with the slow, implacable certainty of a force that cannot be stopped. In your room, on your Kang, you are in the deepest phase of sleep, the phase that the Chinese call Shen Shui, deep water sleep, the phase in which the body is most completely at rest and the mind is most completely absent, withdrawn from the surface of consciousness to some deeper, darker, more fundamental level of existence where the ordinary distinctions between self and world, between past and future, between waking and sleeping, dissolve into a single, undifferentiated field of warmth and darkness and peace. The Kang is warm beneath you, steady and unfailing, a platform of comfort that has been sustaining Chinese sleepers for centuries, and that will continue to sustain them for centuries more. The quilt is light on your body, barely there, just enough to retain your body heat without creating the oppressive weight that heavier coverings sometimes produce. The pillow is cool against your cheek, the silk cover smooth and slightly slippery, a tactile pleasure that registers on your sleeping mind as a faint, pleasant sensation like the touch of cool water on a warm day. The sounds of the ward have ceased entirely. There is no conversation, no dog barking, no clatter of utensils, no creak of gates. There is only the silence, the vast, deep, city-wide silence of 2 million people sleeping simultaneously. A silence that has a quality all its own, different from the silence of the countryside or the silence of the sea. A silence that is the absence not of sound, but of activity. The hush that falls over a great city when every shop is closed, every market is empty, every street is deserted, and the only movement is the slow, invisible movement of the moon across the sky, and the equally slow, equally invisible movement of the earth toward the dawn. This silence is one of the great experiences of life in Chang'an, a nightly gift that the city gives to its inhabitants, a period of absolute, uninterrupted peace that lasts from the sounding of the evening drums to the sounding of the morning drums, a span of perhaps 8 or 9 hours, during which the city rests, recovers, and prepares itself for the extraordinary burst of energy and activity that will begin when the gates open and the new day starts. The silence will end. The drums will sound. The gates will open. The streets will fill. The tea will be poured. The first stir-fry of the morning will hiss in the first walk of the day. The first poem of the morning will be composed, perhaps by Li Bai, perhaps by Du Fu, perhaps by some unknown poet sitting in a courtyard somewhere in the city, watching the light change and reaching for words to capture the beauty of a Chang'an dawn. And the whole magnificent, intricate, endlessly creative mechanism of Tang civilization will click into motion once more, as reliable and as beautiful as a perfectly made clock. But that is morning. This is night. And the night in Chang'an is long and warm and quiet and full of the accumulated beauty and wisdom of 1,000 years of Chinese civilization, distilled into the simple, perfect pleasure of lying on a warm Kang in a quiet room in a sleeping city, under a silk quilt, behind paper windows, in the company of people you love, at the end of a day well lived, in the heart of the greatest age of the greatest civilization the world has ever known. The crickets sing their thin, silvery song, the moon descends, the stars turn, and you sleep on, carried by the warm current of the night toward the dawn that is coming, as it always does, golden and clear and full of promise, flooding the eastern sky with light, waking the city, waking the world, waking you from your deep, warm, peaceful sleep to face another day in the extraordinary, beautiful, endlessly fascinating city of Chang'an, in the extraordinary, beautiful, endlessly fascinating world of the Tang. Sleep well. The morning is coming, but not yet. Not yet. Let us linger a while longer in the world of Tang China, because there are aspects of this civilization that we have not yet touched upon, and they reveal a depth of cultural achievement that is almost breathtaking. Consider the matter of ceramics. The Chinese have been making pottery for thousands of years, and by the Tang Dynasty, their ceramic technology is the most advanced in the world. The glazed pottery of the Tang, particularly the famous Sankai, or three-color ware, decorated with dripping, overlapping glazes of green, amber, and cream, is one of the most distinctive and most beautiful products of Chinese material culture. Exported along the Silk Road to markets throughout Asia and the Middle East. The figures produced in Sankai ware, horses, camels, musicians, dancers, court ladies, foreign merchants, are among the most charming and most vivid depictions of Tang life, captured in clay with a spontaneity and a liveliness that makes them seem almost alive, frozen in mid-gesture, mid-step, mid-song, as if they might at any moment resume their activities and walk off the shelf and into the street. The porcelain tradition is also beginning to emerge in the Tang Dynasty, though it will reach its full flowering in the Song Dynasty that follows. True porcelain, hard, translucent, resonant, and white, is one of China's greatest contributions to world material culture, and the secret of its manufacture will remain a Chinese monopoly for nearly 1,000 years, until European potters finally cracked the code in the 18th century. In the Tang Dynasty, the finest ceramics are produced at kilns in the south, where the combination of the right clay, the right glaze, and the right firing temperature produces a ware that is almost supernaturally beautiful. Thin-walled, delicately shaped, with a surface that is smooth and cool to the touch, and that produces a clear bell-like ring when tapped with a fingernail. The tea bowls from which you drink your morning and evening tea are ceramic, of course, and they are chosen with the same care and the same aesthetic sensitivity that the Chinese bring to every aspect of their material culture. A good tea bowl is not just a container for tea. It is an object of beauty in its own right, appreciated for its form, its color, its texture, its weight in the hand, and the way it enhances the experience of drinking tea. The color of the glaze is particularly important because different colors complement different types of tea. A pale celadon bowl for green tea, a dark brown or black bowl for the brick tea that is more commonly drunk in the Tang period. The relationship between the tea and the bowl, between the liquid and the vessel, is one of the small but deeply satisfying aesthetic pleasures of Chinese life. A pleasure that has been cultivated and refined over centuries, and that will continue to be cultivated and refined for centuries more. Now let us visit, briefly, the world beyond Chang'an, because the Tang Empire is vast, stretching from the Pacific Ocean in the east to the deserts of Central Asia in the west, from the steppe lands of Mongolia in the north to the tropical jungles of Vietnam in the south. It is one of the largest empires in the world, governed from Chang'an through a system of provinces and prefectures that is administered by a professional civil service selected through the examination system. The examinations are open, in theory, to any male citizen, regardless of birth or wealth, and the system produces a governing class that is remarkably meritocratic by the standards of the time. A class of educated, literate, poetry-writing administrators who run the empire with a combination of Confucian ethics, bureaucratic efficiency, and pragmatic common sense that is the envy of every other government on earth. The Silk Road, which connects Chang'an to the rest of the Eurasian world, is not a single road, but a network of routes that branch and converge across the vast, forbidding landscape of Central Asia. Caravans of camels and horses carry goods along these routes, moving slowly through deserts and mountain passes and fertile oases, linking the markets of China to the markets of Persia, Arabia, India, and ultimately the Mediterranean. The journey from Chang'an to Baghdad, at the other end of the Silk Road, takes roughly a year, and it is one of the most arduous and most dangerous journeys in the medieval world, crossing some of the most inhospitable terrain on earth, the Taklamakan Desert, whose name means you go in and you don't come out, the Pamir Mountains, the Hindu Kush, and the Iranian Plateau. The merchants who make this journey are among the bravest and most resourceful people in the world, and the goods they carry: silk, porcelain, tea, and paper from the East, gold, silver, gemstones, glass, and perfume from the West, are among the most valuable commodities on earth. But tonight, the Silk Road is a thought, not a journey, and the deserts and the mountains and the distant cities are nothing more than ideas floating through a sleeping mind, dissolving into the warm darkness before they can form themselves into anything solid or demanding. The world beyond Chang'an is vast and fascinating and full of wonders, but it is also distant and irrelevant to the immediate, concrete, utterly satisfying reality of the warm kang and the silk pillow and the cotton quilt and the soft, enveloping darkness of the night. There is a concept in Chinese philosophy that captures this moment perfectly. It is called Ziran, and it means naturalness, spontaneity, the state of things as they are in themselves, without artifice, without effort, without the imposition of human will or human design. The Taoists teach that the highest state of being is the state of Ziran, the state in which you are completely and unself-consciously yourself, in perfect harmony with the natural world, doing what you do not because you have chosen to do it, but because it is your nature to do it, as naturally and as effortlessly as water flows downhill, as the sun rises in the east, as the plum tree blossoms in the spring. Sleep is the purest expression of Ziran. In sleep, there is no effort, no intention, no will. There is only the body, surrendered to its own nature, doing what it was designed to do, resting and repairing and dreaming in the warm darkness, as naturally and as effortlessly as a leaf floating on a stream. You are not sleeping because you have decided to sleep. You are sleeping because sleep has come to you, as it comes to every living creature, as it has come every night since the first night, unbidden, unstoppable, and absolutely necessary. The Taoist sage Zhuangzi once dreamed that he was a butterfly, fluttering happily from flower to flower, completely unaware that he was Zhuangzi dreaming of being a butterfly. When he woke, he was confused. Was he Zhuangzi who had dreamed of being a butterfly? Or was he a butterfly dreaming of being Zhuangzi? The question is playful, but it is also profound, because it points to the fundamental uncertainty that lies at the heart of all human experience. The uncertainty about the nature of reality, about the relationship between the waking world and the dreaming world, about whether what we see and feel and know when we are awake is any more real or any more reliable than what we see and feel and know when we are asleep. You are sleeping now, and if you are dreaming, you do not know it. The dream and the dreamer are one, indistinguishable, merged into a single, seamless, undifferentiated experience of warmth and darkness and peace. You might be a merchant in Chang'an, sleeping on a warm kang under a silk quilt. You might be a butterfly, sleeping on a flower under the wide blue sky. You might be anything or nothing or everything at once, because in sleep, the boundaries dissolve, the categories collapse, and the vast, infinitely complex, endlessly mysterious universe reveals itself to be, at its deepest level, nothing more and nothing less than a dream. Dreaming itself in the warm darkness, in the deep silence, in the beating heart of the night. The dawn approaches. Somewhere beyond the eastern wall of the city, the first faint suggestion of light is appearing on the horizon, a pale, barely perceptible brightening that is invisible to the sleeping city, but that marks the beginning of the end of the night. In an hour, the sky will be streaked with color, pink and gold and pale blue, and the morning star will be shining alone in the brightening east, the last star to surrender to the light. In 2 hours, the drums will sound, and the gates will open, and the great city will wake, stretching and stirring like an enormous animal rousing from sleep, shaking off the night, filling its lungs with the cool morning air, and preparing itself for another day of work and beauty and commerce and art and life. But for now, for these last precious minutes, the night holds. The kang is warm, the quilt is soft, the moonlight has faded from the windows, replaced by a darkness that is deeper and more complete than any that has come before. The darkness that precedes the dawn, the darkness that the Chinese poets call the darkest hour, the hour when the night has spent all its light and the morning has not yet begun to give any back. In this darkness, you sleep your deepest sleep, your most natural sleep, the sleep that your body has been building toward all night, the sleep in which the restorative processes of the body reach their peak, and the mind descends to its deepest, most peaceful, most perfectly silent level. This is the sleep that the Chinese physicians call the golden sleep, the sleep that heals, the sleep that restores, the sleep that prepares the body and the mind for the new day that is coming. It is the most valuable sleep of the night, and it is the sleep that you are having right now, in the last dark hours before the dawn, in the warm, quiet, silk-scented darkness of your room in Chang'an. Sleep on. The drums are coming. The morning is coming. The tea is coming, but not yet. For a few more minutes, for a few more breaths, for a few more heartbeats, the night is yours, and the city is quiet, and the kang is warm, and the world is still, and the dream goes on gentle and formless and infinitely kind, carrying you through the last of the darkness toward the light that is gathering, even now, on the far side of the sky.